further up today. Hello everyone, my name is Fiona Sweet and I'm the CEO and Executive Director of Stella Prize. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here today as we announce the 2024 Stella Prize Longlist. This is the first time that the Longlist will be revealed at the Adelaide Writers Week, and I want to thank the Writers Week team for all their support, particularly Louise Adler, the Creative Director, and Suzanne Critchley, who's the producer. Since 2012, Stella has elevated the voices of women and non-binary writers through the annual Stella Prize, the Stella Count that has changed the literary landscape, opening necessary conversations about gender and books. Today, 12 books will join 132 books longlisted for the Stella Prize since 2013. And it is with great pleasure that I introduce the judges who worked tirelessly over the last 6 months to uncover these extraordinary books. Eleanor Jackson. Eleanor is a Filipino-Australian poet, performer and arts producer and advocate. Eleanor is the author of Gravidity and Parity, which was highly commended in the 2022 Victorian Premier Literary Awards and the Association for the Study of Australian Literature Mary Gilmore Award 2022, and the winner of Small Press Network Book of the Year 2022. She's chair of Peril magazine, which is dedicated to Asian Australian arts and culture, and producer of the Melbourne Poetry Map. She's a former vice chair of the Stella Prize and board member of the Queensland Poetry Festival. Welcome. Cheryl Leavy, wave, I think, so everyone knows, yeah. Cheryl is from Cooma and Nguri Nations in Western and Central Queensland, the 2022 winner of the Budgeru Nunnuku Poetry Prize. Cheryl has performed at the Brisbane and Byron Writers Festivals, Queensland Poetry Festival and the Queensland's Chamber Orchestra. Her first children's book will be published by University of Queensland Press later this year. Cheryl has served on many arts boards, including the Brisbane Writers Festival, where she established and chaired the First Nations Advisory Council. Welcome, Cheryl. Graham Presser, who couldn't join us today, is a semi-reformed punk rocker, recovering academic, lapsed lawyer, occasional critic, and full-time dad. His novel, The Book of Dirt, won the Voss Prize and 3 categories at the New South Wales Premiers Awards. His stories have appeared in numerous journals and collections. Graham has previously judged the Victorian Premiers Literary Awards, the Age Book of the Year, and the SM8 Sydney Morning Herald Young Novelist Award. Graham unfortunately couldn't join us on stage today. Yves Rees. Yves is a writer and historian living in Naarm. They are a senior lecturer in history at La Trobe University, co-host of the Archive Fever podcast, and author of All About Eve, Notes from a Transition. They are also co-editor of Nothing to Hide, Voices of Trans and Gender Diverse Australia. Their next book will be published with New South later this year. And now the wonderful 2024 Chair of Judges, Beejay Silcox. Beejay is a writer, literary critic and the artistic director of the Canberra Writers Festival. Her reviews and cultural commentary regularly appear in national arts publications and are increasingly finding an international audience, including in the Times Literary Supplement, The Guardian and the New York Times. An award-winning creative writing teacher, Beejay has taught workshops across the globe, including in the US and Cairo. Her short stories and essays have been selected for a number of Australian anthologies. And now over to Beejay to start the conversation about the 12 longlisters for the Stella Prize 2024. Thank you.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
No.
Yes.
Lovely mic lady. Yeah? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Hello, Adelaide. It is such a pleasure to be here. And we're here tonight to celebrate the elemental power of stories. As we do so, let us remember the story of this place. We are on the lands of the Kaurna people, the custodians of the waterways and plains of Adelaide, first dreamers, first writers, first art makers, first storytellers. It's a privilege to tell stories on this land and to share stories on this land. The final deliberations for this year's Longlist were the shortest in Stella Prize history. After months of solid reading and with a pool of 224 entries, it took us 19 minutes to decide on the long list. And that included the time it took to make the tea. And I say this to show how fervent our consensus was. The books on this list have emphatically, have joyfully earned their place. Now, the swiftness of this decision feels particularly remarkable given the astonishing quality of this year's entrants. After years of pandemic innovation and isolation, it feels as if something new is brewing in Australian letters, a literature of ambition. Now, ambitious is a barbed little word in this country, in this culture, especially for women, but it's a word we are determined to rescue from the misogyny and faint praise and tall poppy sneering. The books on our long list distinguished themselves with their irrepressible ambition. They are books that rattle our cages and dismantle our cultural scripts, books that brim with ideas and unruly desire. Some are genre bending, some are genre busting, and others are genre masterclasses. Some are quietly potent, others are wild and bombastic, but they all demand, they command our full-hearted, full-minded attention. They are tales of recalibration and reckoning. It has been a deep honour to judge the Stella Prize this year with these extraordinary judges, so compassionate, so warm-hearted. Our 19-minute decision was the product of 6 months of warm-hearted conversation and debate. We have changed each other's minds, which is a wonderful and far too rare compliment. Before I read the list of nominees, which is why we're here, I would like to say that this is my second year in a row reading for Stella. I've calculated since last year that since the year of 2022, I have read close to 500 works by Australian women and non-binary writers. And I can say with deep confidence and deep joy that the heartbeat of Australian writing is here. Our writers deserve a global readership. It is culturally damning that the great majority of them struggle to eke out a sustainable career at home. That is just one reason why the Stella Prize matters so dearly, and it does. Now, without further ado, the Stella Prize 2024 Longlist. Abandon Every Hope, Essays for the Dead by Hayley Singer. Published by Upswell Publishing. As artistically rigorous as it is intellectually bold, Abandon Every Hope grapples with the industrial meat complex and its socio-cultural reverberations and echoes. But Singer refuses to comply with the blasé orthodoxies of this well-worn terrain. There is no moral shrillness here. There is no expedient looking away. The result is a book about death that feels so very alive. The Anniversary by Stephanie Bishop, published by Hachette Books Australia. Here is genre fiction at its very best. Stephanie Bishop's third novel is unabashedly a psychological thriller, but it's also a sly metafictional think piece on art making, art monsters, and the ever-slippery erotics of power. The result is a book that is as clever as it is delicious, a masterclass in layered sophistication. Body Friend by Catherine Braben, published by Ultimo Press. Catherine Braben's Body Friend is a gentle novel of ungentle things. There is no grand crisis in this book, no red urgency. It is serene and meditative, rich and honeyed. This is a novel of experiential heft and eloquence, which gives shape to the complexities of chronic pain by giving it human form. It is also a tale of friendship and the deep solace of mutual recognition. Eden Glassy by Melissa Lukashenko. A novel of rich spirituality and magnificent scabrous humour. Melissa Lukashenko's Eden Glassy is a triumph of characterisation, from resistance warriors to ornery grandmothers. Her unforgettable cast speak truth to state-sanctioned violence. Through them we explore the complex dynamics of Black community and the deep politics of Aboriginality. These are characters that need to exist in the world. Feast by Emily O'Grady, published by Allen and Unwin. A menacing play on the country house novel, Feast reminds us not so much to be wary of unreliable narrators, but of the deep subjectivity of moral value. While events take place over a brief weekend, the story unearths complexities, secrets, derelictions and joys that span decades and occupy the seamy continuum between good and evil, dignity and contempt, life and death. This is smart writing from a very smart writer. Graft by Maggie McKellar, published by Penguin Books. With great compassion and humility, Maggie McKellar brilliantly interrogates our relationship with the land we live on and with those with whom we share it. This is a dispatch from the sharp edge of the climate crisis. Graft may well be a new benchmark for Australian nature writing. Hospital by Sanya Rushdie, translated from the Bengali by Arunava Singer, published by Giramondo. Hospital is an unflinching and insightful work of autofiction that brings devastating lucidity to the often opaque realm of mental health. Through her spare honesty, the narrator's ordeal becomes our own. We descend into psychosis with her, feel her disconnections and institutional indignities. Rushdie does not want or need our pity, only the dignity of our attention. The Hummingbird Effect by Kate Mildenhall, published by Simon & Schuster. Inventive, mind-expanding and gloriously ambitious, The Hummingbird Effect is speculative fiction at its finest. Kate Mildenhall tackles the headline issues of our age: labour rights, consumer capitalism, artificial intelligence, fertility, family violence, lockdown loneliness, aged care. This is a novel that asks big questions about how we live and die together. Praiseworthy by Alexis Wright, published by Giramondo. Fierce and gloriously funny, Praiseworthy is a genre-defiant epic of climate catastrophe proportions. Part manifesto, part indictment, this book is mighty in every conceivable way. Readers will be buoyed by Praiseworthy's aesthetic and technical quality and winded by the tempestuous pace of Wright's political satire. This is a cannon-crushing Australian novel for the ages. She is the Earth by Ali Cobby Eckermann. Ali Cobby Eckermann's verse novella She is the Earth charts poignant, traumatic, healing territory, harnessing the compact power of its minimalist verse to evoke the vast unknown land and sky, relation and place, knowledge and affect. Steeped in identity, longing and knowledge, She Is the Earth is a deceptively complex work which pushes at the limits of form to deliver capacious affect. The Swift Dark Tide by Katya Ariel, published by Gazebo Books. In delicate and delicious strokes, Katya Ariel's The Swift Dark Tide is a memoir of desire, possibility and queer becoming. Ariel's book is absent the tropes that often accompany stories of romantic and familial love, queer relationships and queer sex. What's left on the page is a sensual, often erotic wade into the deep waters of women who love women, a tale of intergenerational connectivity. And West Girls by Laura Elizabeth Willett, published by Scribe Publications. Laura Elizabeth Willett captures the parochial cruelty festering beneath Perth's mining wealth and cloudless skies, the cutthroat hierarchies of race, class and beauty, moving from suburban malls to modelling catwalks, empty highways to crowded Instagram feeds. West Girls is as real as it is painful. Willett has written a novel of sad girls that is the refreshing antithesis of the sad girl novel. This book is smart, salty and vicious. Please take a second to congratulate your Stella Prize longlistees. Now I'm going to stop talking and rearrange myself a bit. I broke my tailbone, so I have a fractured ass.
Do you want to tell them how you broke your tailbone, Beejay?
On a slippery slide, playing with my brother. We had to call my mum and say, "Mum, I broke my bum," which is very undignified. Last year I joked that I read so much I needed a new pair of glasses, and this year I've broken my bum. So I'm an asset to Stella, clearly. I'm going to hand over to our amazing judges to talk about this experience. How does it feel to read 224 novels in a single go? What is it like to take a core sample of Australian culture?
I mean, I can only say from a personal experience, grateful that it's not 500. But at the same time, and this will be an overused phrase, I'm sure, but it has been an extraordinary honour. I have never read like this in my life, and I have never been moved by reading like this in my life. And I think particularly post the more kind of concerted part of the lockdowns and the pandemic, the sense of what it means to read both alone and then in community has overwhelmed me about the power of ideas and the power of books in ways that I have found truly energizing. So it has shifted and shaped my life, and I think that the magnitude of work that has been brought both to this table and then to the broader field of Stella entrants has blown me away.
Almost a theme, isn't it, that comes across in all of the work. What we're being invited into is to read alone, individually, and then to read again, not just the one reading, but another reading collectively, and then enter into discourse about it. That is what we what we need right now, and is what all of these writers are inviting us to do. Read together, talk about it, and then enter into public discourse about it.
1 second.
I'd also like to add that I think there's been something particularly special about the Stella process of reading and judging. I've judged some other literary prizes, and I have to say, I think Stella's really nailed kind of best practice in allowing a really long, kind of luxurious, generous time scale to read the books and give them the time and attention they deserve over a long 6-month period, and allow space for conversation and give each book its due respect. As Beejay mentioned, I think it's also been something really energising about this year of books.
Yeah, this year has been magnificent.
This year has been, we keep saying again and again, this has been an extraordinary year in Australian publishing. The future of Australian women and non-binary writing is very, very bright. And, you know, after a really hard few years for Australia and the publishing industry and the arts, it's just been so heartening to see such intensely high quality work on the page. Even though, as Beejay said, I mean, it was a quick process to get to this long list, there were so many incredibly high quality books that perhaps in other years would have been on a long list. It was an extraordinary year.
That was a kind of a refrain, wasn't it? In any other year, in any other year.
How many times did we say that?
Yeah.
And how many times did we say, it's the year of non-fiction? And then, it's the year of fiction.
It's the year of poetry. It's the year of graphic novels. We're like, wait a minute. It is the 6th month of the most intense reading of our lives. We all need to dial it down because we had a long process of digital and then in-person conversation around this, and I felt like I was on literally like book club on speed. You know, this is the most intense reading process, but I think that the conversation between the books, not just the conversation within each book, but the conversations between the books about some of the big themes, whether it was climate change, whether it was our relation to First Nations people and country, whether it was the tropes of wife and mother and the interrelation of generations. The conversation between some of these books was truly extraordinary.
To get a sense of that, sorry Cheryl.
It's all right.
We chose the winner yesterday, and at that point, how many times had we read each of the books that we talked about? At least, I think.
At least twice.
At least
Some of them
3 or 4 times. Yeah. These books get read. They get read many times. Sorry, Cheryl, what were you going to say?
I was going to move on from what Eleanor was saying and move into the kind of meta themes.
Let's talk about what the conversation these books are having together, you think.
Almost every one of them is calling us to bear witness to something, to open our eyes wider, to not look away, do not look away. The more comfortable, the more uncomfortable, or comfortable actually, that wasn't an accident, that was maybe a Freudian slip. Either one. Look again, look harder, read further, read more deeply, read it again, talk to the people around you about what you were reading. There are so many subject matters that we're being asked to do this for. The industrial meat complex, First Nations Australia. First Nations Australia inviting us deep inside of ourselves, deep into country, saying you too are country, recognise yourself, and then stand up. There are so many bearing of witnesses, including unto ourselves, of ourselves.
Drought, mental health, motherhood, the body, the elemental feeling of what it means to be in your own body and what you might take for granted, or what might feel like a cage or brokenness. Yeah. These were very embodied books. A lot of them were deeply embodied.
And I think as we were discussing yesterday, like a theme that runs through so many of these books is power and critiquing systems of power over. And, you know, whether that's in relation to, you know, colonisation, the body, animals, gender relations, but showing again and again in this body of work that the problems we have in the world also often stem from our fixation with having power over other sentient beings and the attendant dehumanisation of those beings, which ultimately just dehumanises ourselves.
Absolutely.
And the characterisation of these things, how quite directly many of the authors chose to have their characters embody a theme. And perhaps Alexis Wright is a great example of that. Without any spoiler alerts necessary, it's fairly obvious that Alexis would be writing on sovereignty, perhaps less obvious that a character would be named sovereignty. And I won't spoil it for you. What happens to sovereignty will truly have you rocking in a corner. It's quite remarkable and an excellent use of character as a device, a masterclass.
And then Body Friend for me was another one of those.
Indeed.
As someone who suffers from chronic pain, to read a book about chronic pain, and rather that tries to tell you about it, instead makes the diffuse voices in your head, the warring voices in your head, turns them into people. And so you can interact with them and behave with them and hear them speak. And it's like taking an argument that feels like it's down in your cells, down in your bones, and all of a sudden it lives in the world. And you have a capacity to take that and show it to people and say, this is what it feels like, because they can listen to it talking. It's really extraordinary.
Speaking of talking, the characters relating to each other then.
Yeah.
So Body Friend is a great example.
I know.
I mean, I was only going to say that I also felt something very similar in hospital, where you mean 1 in 200 of us may experience psychosis, but the capacity to really trouble the idea that mental illness equates unintelligence, to just really kick that in the teeth and to provide this coherent experience of what it means to live in the incoherent. And I just felt that was an extraordinary gift to the reader, even presented in the stylistic ways that the author did. I thought it was an extraordinary gift.
There are a number of books in this list that are without sentiment. And I think...
But not without affect.
Not without affect. And that's so important. They're not asking for pity. They're not asking for you to cry for them. They're just asking for that dignity of witness. Just be here with me in this. Listen, watch, see.
And I think that they do that across a lot of forms. Do you know what I mean? You see that in Eden Glassy about this presentation of real, doing like real, fully realised people across centuries. And you see that even in, I guess in a more spicy way, but like the reality of West Girls, the characters that kind of imbricate throughout that story, they are real. I know them from my youth. I am an inheritor of that. Is it a quality? There's not much else to say, but anyway, but just the reality of those.
Or the sensuality in Katya Ariel's memoir, which is so embodied, fully peopled, fully lived, and again isn't saying I want anything from you here, just to understand that this is what is happening inside of me. This is how I feel. And Graft too, I think, is an exceptional example of the art of paying attention.
And of course Abandon Every Hoe, with its kind of excoriating gaze on the sort of, exploitation of animals. It's so rare, I think. We were all so familiar with these horrors, but I think we often turn away from them because of the attendant shame and guilt. And it's so rare to be asked to look squarely at what is happening, the trauma, the pain, the death, but in a way that is not trying to induce shame in the reader.
And there is no didacticism in this list, right? No one is strapping you to a chair and saying, I am telling you what to think about this. There's a lot of trust in the reader to make up your own mind. Step into this, experience it, walk away and make up your own mind. They're not hectoring books. They're not lecturing books. They're deeply generous. And most of them are actually deeply funny.
Exactly. Very, very funny. You're not being asked to do your homework. There are some very serious subject matters that are discussed by pretty much every one of these books, but you are going to have a great deal of fun while reading them. The Anniversary is a great example. A master of its form, of its genre, and the characters are just so layered and sophisticated, and a window into the world of the arts that we all often spend time within, and characters who we recognise. And sometimes, at least for me, I'm prepared to admit that I recognise myself sometimes on the page in many of these books. Invited into self, I think, through characters is something that I wasn't expecting. That was quite a surprise for me. The amount of time I spent in reflection about who I wanted to be, what I wanted to do next, what am I doing right now. Books that will change you. Isn't that what we all say when we're thinking, I need a new book, and you text all of your friends, I need something that's really going to grip me, something that's going to change me, I need to be affected, please. There are 18 recommendations.
I was going to say, when on the kind of matter of character, I feel like so She Is of the Earth kind of features almost like a single character really, or a single named character, but that word blessing came back to me over and over again of like what a blessing it is to sit with these voices and even to inhabit, there was all these sort of like little strata. Do you know what I mean? If you wanted to look at land across Praiseworthy, across Graft, across She Is of the Earth, even Abandon Every Hope. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are many different places where Land and Place and Country sat with me, and I just was like, what a blessing to experience these myriad views and these multitudes. Each a kind of opportunity to just re-ground. Do you know what I mean? I just kept re-grounding through this reading process.
We've mentioned form a little bit, and there are some books in here that are just form disintegrates, right? Praiseworthy is we couldn't even work out what to call it. It is a genre buster, it's a canon crusher. All of our words had a kind of obliterative, it just walks along. And then there are some books in here, and we can often be, I'm a literary critic, we can be very snippy about genre books. But there are a couple of books here that are just genre true and true through to their hearts, but they do it so beautifully, and it's because of the genre, not despite the genre, that makes them great. And I'm thinking of Feast in here as an example of that. Like, it's a sort of country house mystery.
And equally with the anniversary, but I actually feel like Hummingbird Effect also has that same exploding outer form. I think that exploding outer form also happens still with Eden Glassy. I absolutely think that happens with the verse novella, dealing with Ali Cobby Eckermann's work, West Girls even, do you know what I mean? Like these vignettes and character pieces that build and then compress at the same time. I think there was lots of real play with form, very little that kind of started at the beginning, and then the character meets a challenge, and then we resolve the challenge, and we kind of wander out at the end. I was like, there was so little about that, even in the more auto-fictional memoir type works. No neat resolution for everyone to have learned a lesson at the end of it. Lives, real lives, continue on, stories, real stories propel themselves, and I found it so exhilarating to kind of dance between those different genres and forms.
That is something that the Stella asks you to do that other prizes don't, is a multi-genre prize. So we were reading poetry, memoir, non-fiction, experimental novels, YA novels. Yeah, how did it feel, Eve, to have to incorporate everything from hard academic texts up to deeply experimental poetry?
In a way, actually easier than I was expecting. I mean, that's kind of the refrain around the Stella and similar prizes is, the challenge of comparing apples with oranges. But I think this year in particular, just the quality of the writing in these particular books just stood out so much that it didn't actually feel like comparing apples to oranges. It was just like the kind of the jewels shone and you were able to celebrate them. Eleanor talked about the kind of the genre busting books, but I also think, as you've gestured towards Beejay, the kind of books that sit within genre like Feast and The Anniversary are so delicious because the authors are so incredibly smart with their writing, that they've written these kind of page-turning, completely compulsive, immersive novels that you just want to put your whole life on hold and sit in until you finish. But in a deeply intelligent, knowing way in which they play with the reader, they play with the tropes of the genre. And so there's this kind of the pure pleasure of sinking into story, but also this incredible intellectual satisfaction at the same time.
That was what was lovely, is that we have a spreadsheet as we go that keeps track of who's read what, which book's been read more than once, a kind of great triage traffic light spreadsheet. And it's a massive monster of a thing to wrangle when you've got more than 200 books. But we've also got a WhatsApp group between all of us, which would help us sort of basically all run to things where there was heat and excitement. And as these books would come up, they're like, West Girls, quick, everyone go read that. Or Feast, oh my God, I've just spent the weekend reading Feast. And that kind of excitement sort of bubbles up and over. And it's a wonderful experience over 6 months to see how those passions draw all the readers together. It's really beautiful.
It can be quite funny.
Oh, yeah.
I went down a quatrain, tercet, and couplet rabbit hole with Ali, trying to figure out the form. I dragged everyone along. I was sitting there with my own little spreadsheet, counting, trying to figure out patterns, trying to figure out whether she had busted open the rules or complied with them, and then realised, stop it, Cheryl. Just stop it. Let go of the form. hold it a little less tightly, and then it unveiled itself to me. And I think it's okay to say that we spent a little bit of time sobbing.
I would say that there are several books, and actually several moments, and now I feel several, again, teary. I was like, I have been moved to tears by so many of these books, including books that are not on this list. And I really want to say, in that comparison of genre, if this was a non-fiction prize, there would be 12 extraordinary books here. Do you know what I mean? That there's no non-fiction here. Sits with me in some ways, particularly given the quality of some of the books that we read. If this was a poetry prize, I would be, again, weeping. Do you know what I mean? There was conversations within the poetry that I felt were full of such soulful quietude and meaning. But this is, you know, this is the prize that it is, and it kind of tries to bring the immense and the multi-vocal together. But yeah, books I closed and sobbed.
Yeah.
And to then do that and have a friend here to be like, I just read that too, and I cried there too, and I know what loss you are sitting with. It was extraordinary.
And then also the raging.
Oh, the rage.
The raging. There was some rage. Let's talk about the rage.
Without mentioning names, you do go through periods where you will read 50 bodice rippers in a row and go, if I read one more
line about someone's lust and I shall be done for.
Yep.
But
Unless that is Katja Ariel's one more line.
I think we need to say that this list has some of the best writing about sex that Australian literature has seen in many years.
So can I
And
just
that is saying something. It is not easy to write about sex. No one should write about sex. And then there are exceptions to the rule.
So last year on stage when we released the long list, I made a plea to Australian publishers and I said, I read no smut last year. Please send me a smut. And you did.
They did.
And I thank you. Oh, I thank you.
Yeah, so Katja Ariel's The Swift Dark Tide, extraordinary writing about sex, but also The Hummingbird Effect, which, as a work of speculative fiction about the big issues of our age, you would not necessarily think would have a lot of smut, but it does.
And I'm there for it. And teenage sex in West Girls, oh my God, the awkward.
Oh, so awkward.
Yeah.
And we sort of all sat around the table and went, it's a bit too close to home.
Everyone was a teenager once.
Yeah. One of the things that's come back around and around is the power of collective reading. And a lot of these books we dearly hope will end up being book club books. But I wanted to ask you about that. Because we have read them alone and together, what does it do to do that, to sit together and have the conversations we've had? How has it changed you as a reader, do you think? I can start, in fact, because I did the Stella Prize last year and it was a deeply special experience. But the people on this panel are new friends and old friends, and forever because of it. There is something galvanizing and deeply wonderful. There are not many times and places in your life that you have the time and space to speak about the things that are in your heart and your head together with people who offer that generosity of listening to you. And that space we made for each other to talk about smart things, to talk about things we cared about, to say what we needed to say and to unpick what was going on. It's a very special thing. It's a very special thing.
And to speak about things that were sometimes unique unto one person and went straight to their own identity, and to feel in communion with each other almost. I'm not accidentally using that slightly religious tilt to the word. It really did feel slightly tilted in that direction. So, for example, reading Alexis write together and me trying to explain how Alexis is a quintessentially Wani writer. And what does that mean? What does it mean to be a Wani writer? What does it mean for me to say, I want Australia to understand what I'm saying when I say I write in my Kuma voice, that will make us a better people. To read with that conversation starter changes how we read. For me to be able to call one of the judges and ask for companionship when I'm trying to live through reading about Dundalli being hung. You need people around you to help you do this, and to have done it with all of you. To have been given that gift of being forced to see, to listen to this testimony, to witness it in this generation and be given another chance to do something differently, to be something different, and then to share this kind of discourse with each other. This is, as I said before, I cannot compel you enough to start your own Stella book club. If you are not in a book club, start a Stella book club and read these books. I hope that they have the same profound effect on connecting you with yourself and with those you read these books with.
Just building on what's already been said about the power of the collective nature of this experience, it's been for me equally profound and deeply humbling. We obviously live in a culture that is highly individualistic and values individualistic art, that fetishizes the lone genius. I work in academia, and which is in the humanities at least, where I work all about the individual and their sole-authored production. I think this experience for me has just, in a way like never before, exposed the fallacy of that we all think better together, we all learn better together, we are richer as a culture, as a society, when we come together and share ideas. We're more than the sum of our parts. And it's really made me reflect very deeply about our fetishization of the individual and the way that our continued attachment to that perpetuates so many of the, the systems of oppression that have led us to this point, and how any route forward towards justice must involve collaborative effort, must involve community and relationships and centre all those things.
No one book can do that, but all of these books together and all of us reading together might.
Yeah, which is why it's so important, I think, to celebrate this list. The Stella Prize, of course we give a big chunk of cash to one writer, but it's this conversation, it's these authors together in conversation, and it's these authors together in conversation with the other books by Australian women and non-binary writers. It's to show that we are world-class writing culture. These women and non-binary writers deserve a global readership. They deserve to be internationally famous, and we don't value them here at home.
I know why they put the tissues next to Cheryl and I. Lucky they're here. I only want to add and to echo all that has come before, to say that what this has recentered for me as a feminist is the continued importance of interrogating labour. What all of this represents as labour, intellectual graft, physical graft, the labour of living, the labour of bearing witness and continuing to testify, those kinds of labours, collectivised like this, for me feel enormously powerful and like they have their own generative and regenerative motion the more we contribute to it. Do you know what I mean? It is, the work gets lighter as we work together, but it also becomes stronger and more galvanizing. Do you know what I mean? There was, I kept just thinking, I was like, this is the work, this is the place to do the work, and to keep doing it is to make the energy to keep going on. It's the earning of the hope that we may very well abandon. It happens by doing the work together.
And there was a refrain we had in all of the judging when we were speaking about these books: just because you say it doesn't make it so. And so many of these books, we came back to that refrain. Just because we have a script about what it means to be a mother, what it means to be a patient,
what it means to be a body, what it means to be Aboriginal, what it means to be any of these things, any of those norms, it doesn't make it so. You can write a different future and dream the culture forward.
I would like to leave it on "You Can Dream the Culture Forward." Before we go, we have some long listees in the audience tonight, and I do wonder whether or not they can stand up and get the recognition that they are so deeply deserving.
Melissa,
Maggie, Alex, Bobby, excellent. Listen to Cheryl.
All of these books are available to buy. My last piece of advice to you would be buy all of them. Go buy all of them.
And form a book club.
And form a book club to talk about them. Can you please join me in thanking these astonishing human beings on stage with me today?
Can we also please thank Beejay Silcox, who has been the most extraordinary chair of this panel, and I am honoured for the benchmark of respect that you have shown to every writer on this 200 plus list. It is
Extraordinary.
amazing.
And I'd also just like to acknowledge the incredible contribution of Bram Presser,
Yes.
our fifth judge who couldn't be here tonight.
Because he's looking after his
He's looking after his kids.
After his kids. Bram was with us for much of this weekend. He's been with us the whole journey. He's been core to the process. He's been such an energetic and engaged and insightful reader. And
Fast.
Workhorse.
Every day we'd wake up and Bram had read 5 new books. Like, it was very intimidating.
I'd be sitting there with a clock with, a face on it going, how is it even possible? Possible.
Go buy the books, congratulate the authors, talk to each other about these wonderful, wonderful stories, and thank you all for being part of what is, I think, the heartbeat of Australian letters. Thank you so much.
And go dream a new future.